Hey, Sullabach here, and I decided to take this time to talk about an MBTI-related topic that might be of some interest to some of you. It's the SN divide. Now, if you're an intuitive, you probably know what that is, and you've probably experienced a lot of it when dealing with the sensors in your life. And if you're a sensor, you probably don't know what I'm talking about, unless an intuitive has told you about it. So it's basically the typical communication difficulties that happen between sensors and intuitives. So I wanted to talk about it from a sensor's point of view. It's something that I've heard intuitives talk about, either online, in the forums, or on YouTube. And a question that seems to come up a lot is, do sensors have the same problem with the SN divide as intuitives do? The short answer is no, we don't. But it would be more accurate to say we do experience it, but we just don't know it. And of course, the obvious question now is why? And I think one big part of it is the fact that for most sensors, the very concept of sensing versus intuition is hard for us to grasp. And I know this from personal experience. Like, when I was first getting into MBTI, when I read explanations of sensing versus intuition, it's usually described as sensing is focusing on concrete details, while intuition is abstract, big picture concepts. Well, the thing is, we sensors think we're looking at the big picture. Because it's like, who's going to want to ignore the big picture? It's not like we think we're just going to focus on just like these little details and miss the whole reason for looking at those details. So of course we're going to say, yeah, I like to look at the big picture. I have to see what's going on. But see, the thing is, what we don't realize is the big picture to us is just the sum of all the concrete details we're looking at. And that intuitives are seeing an even bigger picture. They're looking beyond what we can see. And so that's why it's hard for us to grasp what intuition really is. That's why I used to consistently type on the border between S and N on online tests. And S versus N was the last piece of the puzzle when I was actually trying to figure out and nail down my type. I figured out everything else, and this is when I was learning about the functions. I nailed down that I was a TI dominant, and so it just basically came down to, okay, am I ISTP or an INTP? And at some point, it wasn't until I realized that I relate a lot more to NISE than SINE. So in order for a sensor to actually grasp what it means to be a sensor versus an intuitive, we pretty much have to actually experience it in action and have it pointed out to us. It's not enough to just be in a conversation with a bunch of intuitives. And in fact, the thing that made me realize this was just recently I was watching this video. It was a type interaction video between 4 NDOMs. It was 2 NI-DOMs, an INFJ and INTJ, and 2 NE-DOMs, ENTP and ENFP. And so there's just these 4 N-dominant women having this 2-hour-long conversation, and I knew most of them from YouTube. So it's for me it was just kind of it was fun just to watch and listen to them having this fun casual conversation, and I was just kind of kicking back and just listening to it on my earbuds and while doing other stuff, and I didn't even notice that I was phasing out. If I'm listening to a conversation, where people are talking about a certain topic that I know I'm not into. Like if I'm listening to two people talking about Game of Thrones, I've never watched Game of Thrones and I don't really know anything about it. So if I hear people talking about it, I know, okay, they're talking about something that I know nothing about, so I might as well tune out. That I'll be conscious that's happening. Whereas this particular video interaction between these N-dominant women, it didn't register as something that was beyond my comprehension. I thought I was paying sufficient attention to the conversation, and so when it was over, I was like, "Oh, that was a pretty cool conversation," and I didn't think anything of it until I read the comments on Personality Cafe, where people were commenting on that video, and like these INFJs were commenting like, "Oh, I related so much to when you guys were talking about this certain thing, and I experienced it in my own life in this way," and they go on to describe how they related to the conversation. And I'm reading these comments, it's multiple people talking about this this video, and I'm going, I don't remember that being part of the conversation. And the more I read it, and the more I realize, there was a whole lot more in that video than I was even aware of. And that's when it clicked. Like, that's the SN divide from my own perspective, happening in retrospect. Until then, I didn't think I was tuning out at any point in the conversation, but apparently I was. So, that's just me as a sensor being purely a spectator, watching and listening to this intuitive conversation. Now, what happens when you have a sensor and an intuitive talking, and there's a communication breakdown as a result of the SN divide? Well, almost always it's going to be the intuitive who notices it. The sensor is just going to be talking about it from their own point of view, not having a clue that there's any miscommunication going on. Whereas the intuitives might get frustrated that the sensor just isn't quite getting it. And I've seen this in, for example, this married couple that I know. The wife is an INFJ and the husband is an ISFJ. I've seen these incidents where the INFJ wife will be explaining her feelings to her ISFJ husband, or she'll be explaining something that she needs from him, and the whole time he's kind of trying to reassure her that he's getting it, that he understands, and then 5 minutes later he'll say something that indicates that he has no clue what she's been talking about, and of course she gets frustrated. And the dynamic is totally different when the ISFJ is talking about his thing. They'll be watching a TV show together, and he'll be commenting on all these things going on. And I remember one time she said to him, "Must you always obsess over all these details?" And of course he just laughs. He just enjoys being himself around her. But the ISFJ never gets frustrated over this sort of these S versus N differences. It's always the INFJ who complains about it. So it's not like, like I was saying, it's not that we sensors don't experience it, but we're just not aware of it. If anything, the sensor will just say, "Oh, that person's weird." Or at least the SJ will say stuff like that. Like, "Oh, that person's weird," or that, "Why are they focusing on something totally unnecessary?" SPs won't care. SPs will just kind of be content to just kind of like sit and listen, and just kind of like, "Okay, that's cool. Want to get some pizza?" or whatever. And I can pretty much guarantee you that every SP watching this is probably craving pizza right now, including me. But anyway, so if you ever wondered how sensors perceive the SN divide, I hope that this kind of gives you a decent idea. And so the next time you're talking to a sensor who denies the existence of the SN divide, Just ramble for about a minute about your favorite intuitive topic, and then ask them what they think about it. And they'll probably give you a weird look, like, why are you talking about that? Or they'll just kind of go, oh, that's cool, I guess. Or they'll just say, oh, I don't know, I never thought about it. Then you can just go, aha, there you go. Anyway, that's it. I think I got some leftover pizza in the freezer.